Most performers fall into one of these three scenarios when at a music rehearsal.
1.
You open the vocal side to see this. Then you hear the MD saying, we're starting on the third system. Sopranos on C, altos on G, tenors on E, basses low C. But your eyes cause you to go deaf because all you're hearing is
2.
you only use the music to read the lyrics. And if you even look at the music at all, it's just to see if the notes go up or down.
3.
You don't even open the music. You read the lyrics from the script, hoping and praying that you can remember the harmonies from what you're able to record on your phone's voice memo. If you said, that's me, to any of those three scenarios, oh boy, are you in the right place. Hi, I'm Jeff Hoffman from Musical Theater Musicianship, where we teach all things related to reading music, specifically for the actor-singer. But if you found us because you were looking to learn more about music theory, welcome. We'd love to help you on your music reading journey. Around the year 1000, an Italian guy by the name of Guido di Arezzo came up with what we now call the musical staff. The staff was invented so that people didn't have to depend on learning their Gregorian chants from monks who learned the Gregorian chants from other monks and so forth and so on. Thank God this happened before Sondheim was born. The modern staff came about in the 16th century when everything became hip, and it was used to indicate pitch and an order of notes. The staff, or plural staves, are made up of 5 lines and 4 spaces, which look like this. Note that when we count the lines and spaces, we start from the bottom and count our way up. The musical notes are written on these lines and in these spaces. A staff without something called a clef is just lines and spaces. Those lines and spaces will have different notes depending on what type of clef is on that staff. So a clef is what informs us of what letter names will be on what lines and spaces. In musical theater, we primarily use the G clef and the F clef. We call this a G clef because it points to the G on the second line of the staff. Notice how the G clef almost forms a circle around the second line. This points us to the note G. The G clef is also sometimes called the treble clef, but looks and acts exactly the same. Its sole purpose is to tell us exactly where the G is on the staff. The rest of the alphabet can go upward or downward from that G. By the way, I did a whole video on the musical alphabet, which I'll link in the description below. The G, or treble clef, is primarily read by sopranos, altos, and tenors. But when tenors are reading from a G clef, it usually has a little 8 below the clef itself to let everybody know that the notes that are being sung should be sung an octave lower. The term octave was also discussed in the linked video. The F clef, or as it's more widely known, the bass clef, serves the same purpose as the G clef. The only difference is the note it's pointing to is now F. Notice the 2 dots on the right side of the clef. Between those 2 dots is the 4th line, or the note F. In piano music, a staff with a treble clef is connected to a staff with a bass clef, and it is called a grand staff. The treble clef staff notes are played primarily with the right hand, while the bass clef staff notes are primarily played with the left hand. A vocal line or multiple vocal lines connected to a grand staff is called a system. However, individual solo vocal lines and choral staves joined together are also called systems. A system contains all the information needed for that grouping of measures. After that grouping is finished, the reader goes to their staff at the beginning of the next grouping or system. Now that you know where the G is on the treble clef and the F is on the bass clef, it's very easy to go up and down from those notes through the alphabet to find out what note is on what line or space. But that process is very slow and cumbersome. Piano students have been using mnemonic devices for many, many years to help them learn and remember the names of the notes on the staff. One or two of those mnemonic devices have become very popular, and there's no doubt that you might have heard them at some time. The famous treble clef mnemonic device is "Every good boy does fine," sometimes referred to as "Every good boy deserves fudge." And the mnemonic device for the spaces on the treble clef spell out the word face, F-A-C-E. The device for the bass clef lines is "Good boys do fine always," and the device for the spaces was always "All cows eat grass." Now, since this channel is aimed at the musical theater performer, I have taken some time to come up with Broadway-inspired mnemonic devices that you might have fun with. For the treble clef lines, try using "Evita's ghost, Bat Boy, is dancin' footloose." To remember the treble clef spaces, try "Frozen Anastasia can escape to Margaritaville." For the bass clef lines, try "Guys and dolls, bring it on during funny girls' applause." G, B, D, F, A. For the bass clef spaces, try "Always careful eating grease." Grease is the word. Stick around to the very end of this video because I'm going to reveal some very special bonus material for you. Notes can also be written above or below the staff with the addition of something called ledger lines. Ledger lines allow the range of notes to be written above and below the 5 lines and spaces. Ledger lines are short lines above or below the staff which extend the range of the notes on the staff. Vocal music only occasionally uses 1 or 2 ledger lines above or below the staff. You can tell if a note is high or low by the placement of that note on the staff. Notice that notes can sit on top of the staff or just below the staff. Those notes are considered spaces because of the imaginary ledger lines that are associated with them. If this is your first time here and you're enjoying the content, do me a favor and give us a thumbs up. It really does help us continue to make this kind of content. Now here we have written all the notes on the treble staff from C all the way up through A above the staff. Notice how the single ledger line was used for the note C, and all the notes proceed upward to the ledger line above the staff, which is the note A. Notice how the note D under the first line of the staff does not have a ledger line underneath it. The same applies to the G at the top of the staff, which does not have a ledger line above it. Here we have done the same for the bass clef. Notice that the F on the bottom of the staff does not have a ledger line below it. And the same can be said for the B at the top of the staff, which does not have a ledger line above it. Now let's put the 2 staves together and form a grand staff. Notice that the C at the top of the bass clef is the same pitch as the C on the bottom of the treble clef. Notice how when that middle C is on the grand staff, both C's share the same ledger line position. When talking about different octaves on the staff, we need a precise description. Saying the second A below middle C is really not too descriptive. That's where scientific pitch notation comes in. Let's say you need to provide someone with your vocal range, whether it be on a resume or an application. You need a very specific way to describe what that octave range would be. Here is a grand staff that diagrams how we classify each octave according to scientific pitch notation. Always remember middle C is C4. That whole octave is classified with the number 4 until the next octave C, which is called C5. Going upward after C4, we have octave classifications D4, E4, F4, G4, A4, and B4. Then we hit the next C, which is now called C5, a different octave classification. Notice that going downward, the notes below C always have the classification of the octave below it. For example, middle C is C4. The B below that C would be called B3, then A3, G3, F3, E3, D3, until we get down to C3. Because we are going downward, that C is in the same octave classification. I have noticed that some casting directors, staging directors, and even musical directors are not familiar with the scientific pitch notation. So that's why on your resume, if you're including your range, I would encourage you to use the scientific notation, but also possibly draw a staff or staves where you're going to put your actual range and draw the actual notes of your range. It's so important for you to constantly drill the note names until they become second nature and you don't have to stop to think what the names of the notes are. You also have the mnemonic devices, whether they be the traditional ones or the Broadway ones that we came up with. However, the best solution is for you to flat out memorize the names of the notes. It's the fastest way, and it's the most secure way, which leads me to the free bonus materials that we have assembled for you. First, there is musictheory.net, an online practice tool for you to be able to drill the names of the notes. In addition to the link to musictheory.net, I have created a series of flashcards which you can use to help you drill the names of the notes. There's also a KAHOOT challenge, which is a contest online to see who can name the most correct notes. This is for bragging rights. I will be posting the top 5 winners on next week's video. If you found any of this content helpful, please click that like button and don't forget to subscribe so you'll know when more of this content is coming up online. And let me know in the comments which mnemonic device you chose to help you, or if you have any questions. A system contain a system for the treble clef line for the treble clef lines. Try using Evitas. I've come up with a few Now, since this channel, ledger lines are short little lines. Ledger lines are short lines above or below the staff, which extend ledger lines which extend the range of the notes above and below the which extend the range of the notes on the staff. Ledger lines are short lines above or below the staff which extend. If this is your first time here and you're enjoying this concert, we're doing a concert. When talking about different octaves on the staff, and let me know in the comments which mnemonic device you chose to help you. And let me know which mnemonic device you chose to help you.